All right, 5-minute workshops. Today is going to be about red meat and cancer. So we're going to figure out, does red meat cause cancer? And I think I've been asking some patients this morning that, and most of them say no, I don't think so. So I've had cancer before. So when I was 25 years old, I had testicular cancer. It was phase 3. It metastasized through my body. It was in my lymph nodes and both my lungs. So cancer is something that I've been through. I've had it. It's not not something fun that anybody wants to go through. But with that being said, the last 10 years of my life, it's been about what do I do to prevent cancer in my body. I've been a vegetarian for the last 5 years. Haven't had any red meat, okay? And one of the reasons for that is not so much of an animal cruelty, that wasn't really my motivating factor. My motivating factor is I don't want to get cancer. What's the optimal lifestyle? What's the optimal diet that I can eat that is going to allow my body to heal and function and not get cancer cells growing in it? So, and I did come across some things and that red meat would cause cancer. And so for the last 5 years, I've kind of lived under that. Like anything else, you hear something, but you don't always research where did that come from. You don't dive into it a whole lot. You just take one thing you heard and you just run with it as like certainty, like that's it. And that's kind of the way we've been. But long story short is I have been starting to incorporate some red meat back in my diet. And, in this video is not to say that vegetarianism is wrong. I'm not trying to prove either one. I'm just trying to say, does red meat cause cancer? And if it does, why do we think that? The reason I thought it was just because some stuff that I had heard before on some cancer documentaries and that kind of thing. But when you really start to look at the research, the World Health Organization, they says that red meat could be a probable cause of a carcinogen, something that could cause cancer. So there could be a correlation there. There's not causation. They're not exactly sure that it does cause it, but there could be a correlation between eating too much red meat. But the problem is the way that they got to this conclusion is through epidemiological studies. And these are observational studies where they just send out questionnaires to people. And in these questionnaires, they just ask them a bunch of randomized questions, okay? And so from all these thousands of questionnaires that they sent out, they find this correlation between the populations that had a lot of red meat also had some slight increased risk of cancer. By the way, that was like 1.5% increase, which if it's under 2, even for these epidemiological studies, they typically don't even pay attention to it. So it's a very, very small percentage. And what they don't do is they don't take into account, does that person have diabetes? Does that person overweight? Do they smoke? Do they drink? Do they work out? Do they take care of their nervous system? They get adjusted? Do they have a lot of toxins around? They don't take any of that into account. It's just an observation that this group of people that had more red meat also had a slightly increased risk of cancer. But there's no actual controlled study out there that shows this. Okay, so there's no, that's an observational study, the one that shows the slight risk, but there's no controlled research out there that shows that red meat will actually cause cancer. I've been on PubMed the last week or so trying to find different research that will show me this. Does it actually cause, and the research just keeps coming up and saying the same thing, that there could be a slight correlation, but there's no proof that there is any type of correlation between red meat and cancer. Okay, and you think back, like our ancestors, they ate meat, right? They ate red meat for a long time, and there wasn't this, they didn't die off of cancer or anything like that. So I do want you to understand too that all meat is not created equal. I think we have to look at it like that because, a lot of this links processed meats and red meats into the same category. And I would still put both of those things in 2 different categories. Like a processed meat is going to be like your salami, your bacon, your sausages, the things that are all encased and they got maybe some slight preservatives in them, compared to like your just slab of meat, like your sirloin, your T-bone, or your liver, or some type of organ tissue meat. That's going to be a different than a processed meat. And then you have your grass-fed beef, something that was raised humane, that was, eating what it was supposed to eat compared to a genetically modified, corn-fed diet, that a cow is eating. So, if I get something that's not organic, something that's not grass-fed, then it's going to be loaded with antibiotics, steroids, hormones. We know this, and they're going to be fatter. Their tissue is going to be fatter, but it's because of everything that they've been fed. Okay, so there's a difference there between, are you eating good quality meats or are you eating, genetically modified meat? But and then the processed meat. Here's I'm going to do a whole video on nitrates and nitrites because that's what that's what I've always been afraid of. If I eat processed deli meats, that they're going to have nitrates and nitrites in them. But it turns out that 90% of all the nitrates that you get are from fruit or from vegetables. Okay, so celery, beets, arugula, that's where you're gonna get. Like, so I read some stuff that said celery, beets, and arugula have more nitrates than 100 hot dogs put together. So most of your nitrates are gonna actually come from like celery root, arugula, beets, those kind of things if you're eating them. Nitrites, that actually comes mostly from your saliva. So the conclusion on nitrates and nitrites is still kind of out there. I'll do a whole video on it, but they may not be as to fear as we thought they were to fear as well. But to sum all this up, the conclusion is I really don't think that there is a causation between eating red meat and cancer. And if you are concerned about this, please realize that you can, there's blood markers to test for this. So we know that IGF-1, that's something that may go up if you're eating too much red meat. That methionine, so you can do a homocysteine test and you can see if your methionine levels are getting too high. Because if they are, then you need to offset it. You'd offset it with like glycine, bone broth, different ligamentous tissues. Those kind of things will offset those methionine levels. So so I tested all this before I started eating red meat again, because as a cancer survivor, I want to make sure that I am testing these levels and that they're not just flying off the charts or something, because I've incorporated red meats back into my diet. So, but I just don't think that there is that causation between the two. So hopefully that can kind of change the thoughts, change the way you look at this. One last thing, if you start typing it on the internet, so just go to Google and you say, does red meat cause cancer? You'll find like these cancer institutes. The problem is they all keep quoting the same thing. It's quoting these observational studies, and then these same people are telling you, eat whole grain cereals. Eat your dairy products. Like, it's not good advice anyways, because you don't want to eat whole grains. You don't want to have sugar. Sugar absolutely feeds cancer cells. So, there's a lot of things that you have to look at when you look at this research. So, hope that helps, guys.